Hello everybody, my name is Neil Bakiev and I'm your IELTS instructor from New Zealand. My website IELTSTOEFL.com will help you to prepare for the IELTS exam. Today we'll be focusing on our speaking topic, which is films and cinema. Here is our first question. Can you compare television and cinema as forms of entertainment? And here is my Band 9 response. Absolutely. While television offers convenience and variety, it simply can't hold a candle to the cinema experience. Watching a film at the movies with surround sounds, a massive screen, and that shared atmosphere creates a level of immersion that television just can't replicate. Nothing beats the thrill of watching a blockbuster unfold in real time, surrounded by other moviegoers reacting with you. Television is great for everyday entertainment, especially binge-watching series at home. But when it comes to impact and emotional intensity, cinema wins hands down. Now let's just look at some great phrases here. Instead of saying television is not as good as watching a movie in the cinema, you could say television simply can't hold a candle to the cinema experience. So when something is not as good as something else, you can say television simply can't hold a candle to. And we usually use a negative form here, can't hold, right? Not can hold, but can't hold. Next, instead of saying watching a big movie at the cinema is the most exciting experience, you could say nothing beats the thrill of watching a blockbuster unfold in real time. In this case, beats basically means is better, okay? So in this case, the word thrill means excitement. Unfold here means happen. Next, instead of saying the cinema is clearly better, you could say cinema wins hands down. So when you're certain, when you're 100% sure that something is true, you can use the phrase hands down. Okay? Next, let's focus on the next question. Do people in your country prefer American films or films from their part of the world? Here's my response. In my country, American films are still incredibly popular. People eat them up like hotcakes, especially big budget action and superhero movies. That said, in recent years, local films have started to gain traction, particularly those that reflect our culture, humor, and social issues. These stories often hit closer to home, which makes them more relatable for many viewers. In fact, some of our regional filmmakers have given Hollywood a real run for its money, both in terms of storytelling and production quality. However, Hollywood still has the upper hand when it comes to global appeal and marketing power. Now let's just look at the language here. Instead of saying American films are still very popular, people watch them a lot, you could say American films are still incredibly popular. People eat them up like hotcakes. So instead of saying very popular, you could say incredibly popular. It sounds a lot better. Okay, and then instead of saying people watch them a lot, you could just say that people eat them up like hotcakes. It's a great phrase. Next, instead of saying but in the last few years, local films have started to become more popular, you could say, that said, in recent years, local films have started to gain traction. So you see, the word but is very simple, but if you say that said, it sounds a lot better. Okay, and then here, start to gain traction. That means they have started to become more popular. Next, instead of saying these stories feel more real and personal to people, you could say these stories often hit closer to home. So hit closer to home means that they feel more real and personal. Next, instead of saying some of our local filmmakers have become strong competitors to Hollywood, you could say, in fact, some of our regional filmmakers have given Hollywood a real run for its money. So when somebody is a strong competitor, when somebody is as good as you are, then you could use this phrase, give somebody a real run for, and then his money or her money, and so forth. Next. Instead of saying, but Hollywood is still stronger when it comes to being popular around the world and advertising movies, you could say, however, Hollywood still has the upper hand when it comes to global appeal and marketing power. So the phrase have the upper hand means to be stronger, to be more powerful, to be more advanced. Okay. All right, now let's just focus on the next question. How do you think world cinema will develop over the next 50 years? I believe that over the next half century, with the internet connecting the dots between filmmakers, critics, and audiences in every corner of the globe, we'll see an unprecedented exchange of ideas. This seamless collaboration will make waves in storytelling techniques, blending cultural narratives in ways we've never imagined. Moreover, advances in technology such as immersive VR cinemas and AR-driven subtitles are said to be a game changer, breaking down language barriers and creating truly universal viewing experiences. As a result, local and independent films will thrive alongside big budget productions, offering viewers a rich tapestry of world cinema. Now let's just look at the language here. Instead of saying with the internet helping to build connections between something and something, or with the internet bringing together something and something, you could say something like, I believe that over the next half century, with the internet connecting the dots between filmmakers, critics, and audiences in every corner of the globe. So please remember this phrase, with the internet connecting the dots between A and then B and C. Next, the smooth teamwork will bring big changes to the way stories are told in films. Okay, so it's a very simple version. You could say something like, this seamless collaboration will make waves in storytelling techniques. So instead of saying bring big changes to something, you could say make waves in something. Okay, next phrase. Instead of saying also new technology will make a big difference and change things a lot, you could say moreover, advances in technology are said to be a game changer. Okay, so when something will change a lot, we will see a lot of great changes. So you can just say that are set to be a game changer. All right, next question. Do you feel that film stars are overpaid for what they do? Okay, here's my response. To be honest, yes. I do think many film stars are overpaid, especially when you compare their earnings to everyday people who barely scrape by, working long hours just to make ends meet. Of course, I understand that being in the spotlight comes with pressure and a lack of privacy, but earning millions for a single role seems a bit over the top. While some argue they bring in the big bucks for studios, the gap between their paychecks and those of teachers or healthcare workers is shocking. At the end of the day, they're raking it in while others are counting every penny. I think it's time to put things into perspective when it comes to money in the entertainment industry. Now let's just look at the language here. Instead of saying, I think many movie stars get too much money, especially when you compare them to normal people who work hard and earn very little, you could say, I do think many film stars are overpaid, especially when you compare their earnings to everyday people who barely scrape by. So when somebody is overpaid, that means that they get or earn too much money. Okay, and this phrase is also great. Barely scrape by. That means earn very little money to survive. Next, instead of saying, I know that being famous is stressful and means you don't have much privacy, you could say, I understand that being in the spotlight comes with pressure and a lack of privacy. So instead of saying being famous, you could say in the spotlight. Next, in the end, they make a lot of money while others have to be very careful with their spending. Okay, it's a very simple way to say it. You could say something at the end of the day, they are raking it in while others are counting every penny. So instead of saying in the end, you could just say at the end of the day. Instead of saying make a lot of money, you could say raking it in. Pay attention to this pronoun it, so we should say raking it in. Okay, and then counting every penny. That means be very careful with their spending or with their money. Okay, and one more phrase. Instead of saying I think we need to think more carefully about how much money people make in the entertainment world, we could say I think it's time we put things into perspective when it comes to money in the entertainment industry. So the phrase put things into perspective, that means to think more carefully about something, to analyze something, to reconsider it. All right, okay guys, I hope that you've learned how to talk about this topic. You've learned a lot of great phrases, and hopefully you will be able to get a high score in the IELTS speaking exam. Please visit my website ieltstoefl.com to prepare for the IELTS exam. Also, you will be able to find my speaking correction service, which I provide to help students like you. You can send your recordings and I will analyze them and I will help you to identify your errors or your mistakes that prevent you from getting a high score, and then I'll show you great responses and I'll give you great feedback and recommendations. All right, see you next time.